to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast, From the Touchline. And now, here's your host, Rev Brad.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast today. I can't believe that I'm actually getting this done, getting this across. I just moved into a new office space and finally have unpacked, I think, what is the last of the boxes. I don't have a lot of stuff. It's funny, I asked my family to come help me move, and my wife got here and was like, wow, you've already done most of it. You've done all of it. And I was trying to tell her, like, for me, it's just checking those boxes, having something done. I needed to get it done. I needed to get it done and clean and ready. And I kind of feel like, wow, it felt like it took the better part of 4 or 5 days to get finally everything offloaded, unloaded, and set up and ready to go. And there's still a few quirks and things to work out being in this new space. Some of you may know I was officing at a church off I-25 and Orchard here in Denver. That's where I would do the bulk of my work. And then, the church decided to sell their building, moving out, moving on. So I spent about 3 years in that space. And fortunately, a friend of mine had a little office space for me to sublease. So I'm going to do that for the next few months and then kind of see where I can land next. But anyway, all of this, first, let me say I don't like change. I don't like change. I like routine. I like things to be regular, anticipated, built out for. I don't like change. I don't do well with change. I've kind of been in an emotional funk for the past few days because I feel the angst and the tension of putting things in boxes, having things out of order, and trying to figure it out. Now, there are some advantages to moving. One is that you can lighten the load, so to speak. And so I've been able to cut back on a few of the books that I have. And part of me is, my kids are all like, Dad, do you really read all these books? And it's like, yeah, most of them, but not all of them. And it reminded me, a French writer and poet, he once said, he who would travel happily must travel light. And I just thought, the lighter that I can get in my travels, whether it's Soccer Chaplains United or being the chaplain for the Rapids, probably the better. I try and practice this at home as well. It's like every spring, it's like, can we garage sale stuff? Are there things that we're done with? Can we just try to sell them? If not, let's donate them or let's dump them. Let's keep the house feeling light. And you just tend to accumulate a lot of things. Well, This past move has got me thinking about something that I wrote about a couple years ago called the Suitcase life. And I think one of the less glamorous aspects of professional sport is that a lot of life is lived out of a suitcase. Former PGA Pro player Gary Player, he estimated he had traveled some 15 million miles in his career. And when I look at other sports, when I look at soccer, at football, and I go, there's a lot of travel involved. Maybe there's some other sports that travel more. Professional baseball players, I think, spend nearly a third of the season on the road, not including months of spring training. MLS, Major League Soccer here in the U.S., has quite a bit of travel. It's changed a bit over the years with more chartered flights and kind of the league growing. Now they can kind of like pick and choose better. Like we're going to play in the West mainly, and maybe a few Eastern Conference opponents. So some of that can change some of the travel. But, with all the travel, with all sort of the packing and unpacking, I think it begged this question that says, how do we travel? How does one get around from here to there in life? And, it's interesting. I was doing some research for this, and there are several travel profiles out there. I'm curious which one you might be. Let me go through 5 or 6 of these and see if one of these might speak to you. So there's a travel profile called the traditionalist. And the traditionalist doesn't travel that often because they enjoy the routine and structure of home life, and they don't like to disrupt it. But when they travel, they plan the trip, stick to the plan, and they have a bunch of research, and they just do everything that they want to do. They tick all the boxes on their bucket list or whatever it is. Then you have, so that's a traditionalist. You have the sightseer. Now, this person's a little bit more than the traditionalists, but they're flexible. They go with the flow when it comes to a change in plans. And so it's like, oh, the lines are too long over here. Let's get in here. Or hey, we found this great little spot. Wasn't part of the plan, but let's spend a little extra time here and we'll cut something else over here. Now, the sights here is fun, a little bit more touristy, I think, but there's this attitude of the go with the flow, and we don't have to stick to the plan so much. Then there's the journeyer. The journeyer, they enjoy the journeyer, so they don't mind a longer way. So, can we take a drive? Can we get on a train? Can we bicycle a path? They don't mind getting to the destination and making it as relaxed as possible. And they don't even care about the location. It's just about the journey. And they appreciate what's familiar and comfortable, but hey, let's take our time getting there and just let's stop along the way. I don't do this when I drive to visit family in Kansas. I do not stop along the way. There's plenty of interesting sights, the world's largest ear of corn or, whatever it is. But I usually am like, no, let's get to our destination. That's me. Then there's the voyager. The voyager enjoys travel. They're open to a number of ways to get to a certain location and move about. And they don't mind a little bit of tourism now and then, but they often look for what's authentic, what's native. Like, can we get into a little theater over here? Can we meet and rub shoulders with the locals? And so they enjoy that a little bit more than getting into the overcrowded, over-commercialized kind of place. Then there's the pioneer. Blaze a trail. Like, let's get to a new place. Let's adventure. Let's go off the beaten path. These folks stay away from anything that has to do with familiar. I've often said this to my kids when they travel. I said, hey, when you go out to eat and you're traveling, don't eat at some place that you could eat when you're home. Like, try something new, even if it's fast food or sort of chain commercialized restaurant. Like, just try something new. Don't just like settle for what you can get at home, even though it's familiar, even though it might feel safe. Then lastly, there's the venturer. They're more extreme than a pioneer. They explore out-of-the-way places, and they like to add in the physical thrill of the adventure. So, I just imagine this person kind of canoeing down the Amazon River or sleeping under the stars and going where no one or few people have gone before. So those are some of the ways that people kind of travel when they take trips, when they go on vacation or holiday. But I think too, there's a way that we engage life in that way. There's a way that we engage the different changes that come to us, whether vocationally or moving home, moving career. Those things for our families, for ourselves, those kind of get built into our personalities. And I think that when we travel and we marry up, like we marry someone who has a different personality profile when it comes to travel, our children, like my family and I have camped a lot here in Colorado. I don't know that my kids are going to take camping in with them as they move along the way. Some of them will, but I think a few of them are like, Dad, I'm done camping. I'd rather have my curling iron and my hair dryer, and I'd be comfortable, and I'll glamp or maybe I'll hotel stay, but camping may be done for me. So, but no matter where we find ourselves, we usually find ourselves somewhere on the road. And I wonder, when you're on the road, answer this question for me. When you're on the road, do you unpack your suitcase and put your clothes in closets and drawers? Or do you tend to leave everything in the suitcase and take it out when you need it? Now, you might travel a little differently depending on the length of stay or the purpose of the trip, but I think that this is indicative of ways that we live out life. I remember I was traveling one time with the team and staying. This is back when we'd share rooms, and I was staying with an assistant coach. And when I got into the room, I took my suitcase, and I think we were only in town for 2 or 3 days for this match. And I took my suitcase and emptied it, and I hung my clothes up. I put things in drawers. He said, Rev, why are you doing that? Why are you taking the time to do that? And I said, even though it's not home, it gives me sort of a semblance, a reminder of home. And I think that he was like, brilliant. I hadn't thought of that. He more lived out of the suitcase. So just oh yeah, I need socks, my trainers, I need whatever these things are. I'll just grab them out of my suitcase as I need them and put them back. And that leaves this mentality of I'm in this temporary place for a temporary time, and I just think it changes some things. So, I think I'm not going to say that you have to travel a certain way, but I wanted to share with you, just in the rest of what remains for the podcast today, a number of ways that we can travel, not just in the road in our journeys, but in life. And learning to travel well, I think, is an important thing, especially when we're in an environment like football, like soccer. There's a lot of travel involved. And so here's one of the first things is it's important to remember where we're from. Now, if you're born in a different part of the world, or you've spent significant amount of time in a different place, I think remembering where we're from is an important part to understanding ourselves and understanding the journey. The Apostle Paul in the Scriptures, he once reflected back on his background. You can read it in Philippians 3, 5 through 12. And he just went through the whole litany. He's like, I was raised this way. I was trained this way. I've gone through X, Y, and Z. And all of these things are great. Many of them have shaped me. But there's something else I'm still pursuing. And so there's this idea that he realized within himself that much of his journey was great and powerful, but there's something else that he was still pursuing, something that he was after. And of course, that was modeling and being like Christ. And so, as he looks at all these things that shape him, and we might say today that Paul had a privileged background, where he had come from, his Roman citizenship, the level of education that he had. But it's still important to remember where we're coming from sometimes, and remember those things that have grown on us and shaped us. And it helps us because remembering where we come from helps us in realizing and in knowing where we are going. One of my favorite children's stories is called The Trip to Panama. And in this story, I've probably shared it a number of times. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. But in the story, Tiger and Bear, they discover this crate of bananas that's labeled Panama. And they go, oh, we're going to Panama, all the way to Panama. And they get to their destination, and when they arrive, they're unsure. Like, they're looking at this, and they're like, this place looks unfamiliar to us, and everything looks and is much bigger. And it's funny. I don't want to ruin the story in case you want to check it out, but essentially they make this circular journey, and they're gone so long that they end up right back where they started. But because everything's kind of overgrown, that they're like, this must be Panama. This must be a place where we can make home. And so, for Paul and others, your background and past is important, but not nearly as important as the journey's final destination. And so our views about life, death, the afterlife come into consideration. And I'm just curious if you even believe in an afterlife. If not, then perhaps that great philosophical phrase that has been captured in the bumper sticker, "He who dies with the most toys wins," maybe that's the quantifiable end of life for you. But if you do believe in an afterlife, there are other key attributes and characteristics. We realize we can't take earthly possessions with us. And again, I think all of these things help us to realize, I don't have to hold on to these things, or maybe, the house where I grew up was special, but it's time to move on. And there's other cultures that we could look at, other peoples that, when it came time to move, they kind of knew there was a necessity to moving. I think about the nomads in the Middle Eastern areas, where you had to move and go where you could graze your cattle. Like you couldn't just stay in one place. You had to keep moving. And so everybody has a little bit of a different view and different aspect to the end game or where we're going. But I think all of those things, again, are shaping us in the ways that we travel. So I think that, depending on where you're coming from, and me coming as a Christian person, as a chaplain especially, I think it's important because I realize there's a eternal final destination that that I believe in, that I'm walking toward, that I'm aiming for. And so I think the sort of third key aspect to traveling well is choosing a path to tread wisely. in our modern day and age, we tend to default to the technical ways that we travel. Sometimes we're just so built into the GPS that we don't pick our eyes up and look for ourselves to see, oh yeah, there's the building, there's a place where I'm supposed to go to. But life is different. And I think it was wise, King Solomon once said this. He contrasted the two life paths as he was writing in the Proverbs. He writes in Proverbs 4:18-19, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble." And I think that, Solomon's words may remind us of Robert Frost. He once wrote, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by." I think we can walk through life enough that we see, oh yeah, someone else has gone this way, or many people have gone this way. And sometimes we even make our choices that way. We just go, well, it seems like everyone's kind of doing these things. It may be wise for us to stop, take a minute and go, wait, where's everybody not going? Like, what's some wisdom that I can learn? And traveling well is a lot about choosing what path we're going to walk on. Well, I think another component to traveling well is choosing a worthy travel companion. Now, that could be a spouse, a partner. It could be just a friend, and I'd ask, like, who's around you in your journey? Are there trusted friends, a counselor, chaplain, pastor, teammates, coach? In different seasons of life and stages of the journey, we need to have different companions. I think of, again, one of my favorite stories is Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And in, Frodo Baggins there is having to, determine, well, he's not really determining, but there's a whole company that kind of come around him and Bilbo and sort of how they travel. And there's this unique mix of support that surround Frodo in his quest to carry the Ring of Power and Bilbo in his quest to go find treasure. And so I think everybody that's around us, we could look at and see, what gifts, what talents, what part of their personality do they bring, and how do they bring me joy or protection or safety, or what's the relational component here that they bring in the midst of our travels. Well, finally and lastly, traveling well means not only preparing for the journey, but preparing for the unexpected. A number of years ago, there were engineers for what was then the longest ocean bridge. And they were interviewed after completing the project, and they talked. They said the most difficult problems that we encountered in the construction weren't the problems that we anticipated and planned for. It was the problems that we didn't anticipate. And then we had to, on the fly, come up with solutions, viable, sustainable solutions that could help us finish the project on time and under budget and all of these things. And so, sometimes in preparing for life's journey, we need to prepare mind, body, and soul. And we need to create margin and space and resources for the unexpected parts of the journey, because those things will come. There will be the moments like, for me, as I think back to my whole office situation, when I started the year, I wasn't planning that the church that was giving me the office space would sell their building and I'd need to move on. That wasn't part of my plan. It wasn't part of my budget. And so, it's interesting as I got the news probably a month and a half before it happened. Oh man, I started calling everybody I knew and asking people, hey, does anybody know of a space? Is there a space? I probably annoyed a few people because I'm such a planner. I go back to that traditionalist model, and when we vary from the plan, it really is tough for me. But even within that, I'm having to learn, okay, what is the, sometimes we'll say the silver lining, or what is the good thing that's going to come out of that? And sometimes we don't know. Like, here I am, day 2 in this new office, and I don't even know what to expect. I don't know what's good or new or a blessing about this space yet. I don't even know how long I'll be here. That some of that builds anxiety within me. But I think that trusting and knowing, hey, you know what? God's in control. God's in control of this journey, and whether I get into a different space in 6 months or whether I'm staying here and it works out, it fits, we're going to need extra budget. We're going to need extra funds coming in for some of these additional costs that we're taking on. But in all those things, like creating that margin and space for the unexpected parts of the journey, help us to be and dwell and exist and live in peace. Well, hey, friends, I know I've gone a little bit long this week, and which is a little bit of a surprise because I'm like, how do I have time for even doing a podcast, unpacking the boxes? But as I go, let me leave you with one of my favorite Gaelic blessings. This is a blessing for travel, and I pray this blessing for you. So whether you're traveling this week for a match, for a game, traveling back home to see family or friends, or you've just gotten word, a new team, maybe it's something different. Maybe you're having to move office space just as I did, but take this blessing for travel. Maybe you just take it with you in the different places where you travel in the different moments. But may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen. Thanks for listening, friends. This has been Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline.